confronting tough conversations for a positive outcome. That's coming up.
Maybe if you can broaden and open that up of another world, there's a whole world out there, it's possible that you can get people to think in a different way.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Cyton, because results matter. Theraderm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. Happy to meet you. Prime, fresh, fast. Lee Marcus, stop looking, start finding. Children's Learning Place, ballroom baths and home design. Kettleheads, UFC Gym Wrigleyville, My Buddies Chicago, Brendan Studzinski with State Farm, Goldfish Swim School, Ella's Bubbles, The Kids Table, High Five Sports Chicago, The Metropolitan Chicago, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, Mitchell Black, Jewelry and Coin Mart of Schaumburg, CI Med Spa, Love Your Melon, Deluxe Cleaning Services, STI Moving and Storage, Tutu School Chicago, and by other sponsors.
Hello and welcome. Today's topic is difficult dialogue. We are introducing you to stories that involve delicate conversations that happen to change the world.
Bishop T.D. Jakes is known for his messages. As a filmmaker, bishop, and author, his calling is speaking, and he knows how to get people to listen.
I knew when I was 8 years old, my mother was carrying me in the car to speak for her sorority. She was a Delta, and she was a public speaker. And I was sitting in the back seat of the car, and I said, right now, I'm going to hear you speak. And they called me Mrs. Jake's son. I said, the time is going to come. You're going to come hear me speak, and they're going to call you Tom Jake's mother. And that's all I knew. I didn't know I would be a preacher. I didn't know what kind of platform it was, but I knew I was going to speak.
In his new book, Don't Drop the Mic, T.D. Jakes encourages and teaches others how to effectively communicate so they can use their own voice to make a difference.
Drop the mic means you did it really good. I wanted to switch it and say, don't drop the mic, because words are powerful and they are either tools or weapons. It depends on who wields them and how they use them.
Well, let's go into that, communicating effectively, because that's something that's, in this day and age, we are so quick. We see a lot of people just take into their fingers, their social media, in the sense of like, they just lash out. But in your book, are you telling people to actually not only stay hold of their platform and speak their truth, but also like anchor it in more?
I'm saying, let's get out of our bubble without being forced out of our bubble. All of us have a platform and all of us have a microphone. It may not be a literal mic, it's influence. But if you're going to really affect the culture, you have to be able to go into the broader audience and communicate effectively with people that are very different from yourself. Bring people around you who are different from you and have conversations. Some of the best dinner parties I've ever been to in my life were filled with people who were absolutely different, sitting around the table with a rabbi and a Catholic priest and an agnostic and an atheist. And we're all having dinner together. We're having this amazing conversation. And what's amazing about it is how different we are. What's boring is a table full of people who agree about everything and think the same about everything. Who wants to eat with them?
How do we go about loving and caring for people that are completely different than us?
Talk to the person who's cleaning your house. Talk to the person who's checking you out at the checkout counter. Meet people that you normally avoid meeting and have a conversation with them and talk to them like they're a real person. And you'll find out, hey, they're not as different as I thought. They love their kids like I love my kids. They want their kids to have a better life like I want to have a better life. And ask them, rather than to come to them as a teacher, come as a student and ask them, this is one of my favorite questions, what is it like to be you?
Bishop T.D. Jakes talks a lot about acceptance, and that has people tuning in. He encourages people to follow in his footsteps, to create a dialogue and not a lecture.
People can tell when you love them. And when you love everybody, they can feel it. You can't change people you won't talk to. That's why I say don't drop the mic. We talk about what's wrong with them. You can't change people like that. You have to talk to people about what's right with them and what they can be and what they can do. And that way you can move them toward being the best version of themselves they can be, as we are all trying to be, and none of us are finished with that.
Conversations that must be had. That's what Shifa Zong is facilitating after recent hate crimes against our Asian American communities. This difficult time has him and others stepping up and speaking out.
Welcome to the show, Shifa.
Thank you for having me, Whitney.
We've been seeing these headlines play out on our Asian American communities with hate crimes. What do you think is going on behind all this?
Yeah, I think for the most of the people who are not Asian Americans, they don't really know what's happening to us, right? And I can tell you that right now, everything that you're seeing that on the headlines, this is not something new. We are experiencing everything that you see on the headline since the start of the pandemic.
Why has it escalated during the pandemic?
Because this is what we see on the news during that time. And then we are Asian Americans are being the scapegoat of these incidents.
So why is it so important to speak up about this? Because I've been seeing your videos, I've been watching what you've been doing, and you've been very vocal about what it is like to be you.
Yeah, I think to answer your question is I can provide you with the cultural context. Most of the Asian culture we growing up is that we don't really challenge the authority. We don't really speak up when we are in a difficult situation, right? What my dad told me was, do not speak up. Just take the hit. Whatever that people give it to you, just take it and then just go, right? So we and my culture is that we've been trained to have this kind of thinking. From what they know, they don't really speak the language. They don't really know about American culture, right? So they just want me to be silent. And then I'm learning from my friends. I learned that something is not right. Why every time something that happened to us, we need to be silent? If we keep being silent, the problem is not going to be solved, right? So in order for us to at least have a fighting chance, this is a perfect time for us to speak up.
So when you're at these protests, is it mainly your generation that's rallying together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's what I thought in the beginning. So, and then it turns out when I was at the protest in Chicago, Chinatown, I see all these Asian grandmas and grandpas, they're holding signs in Chinese. But the first thing we need to start this movement is to get the young people together. And then the elderly will follow because they understand.
What can I do to help end this type of hate?
I'm all about the action steps. What are the things that we can do? Right now, obviously, you see so many awareness, right? We already achieved our first step. So what's the second step? The second step to me is the solution. So right now, I am actively pushing this initiative called Chicago Love Chinatown. So this is a way for the people who are not from the community so they can find this place to learn more about Chinatown. Because what's happening in Chinatown or the Asian community in Chicago right now is not something new.
It's kind of just this reckoning of we're all in this together.
Yes, we are facing so many different problems. This is Asian Americans' problem. It's not the only problem, right? So we have other problems in the United States. Right. But at the same time, we are talking about it. We are actually doing something about it. Instead of, this is the hate crimes happening to the Asian Americans.
We're not ending there. We're actually talking about it.
Yeah, we're talking about it. And then now you and I are sitting together. We are talking about solutions. What are the things that we can do? I think this is really important to to tackle this problem.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, thank you again for having me. I think this is a platform to amplify our Asian American voice.
And from a movie to a podcast, meet the host of What the Deaf, who have developed a platform to answer tough questions.
Hello, hello. Hello. I'm Carly. And I'm Sarah. And we are two deaf women doing this podcast.
Carly and Sarah are the creators of What the Deaf podcast, where they discuss and share their experiences living in a hearing world.
There's so many things that we wanted people to take away from, but really that there's so many different kinds of deaf within our community. There's not one right way to be deaf. And with that and our upbringings and our stories and our identities, we really give the audience a taste of the different types of beautiful deaf people and their journeys through life and navigating a world that is so unknown to many people. So we want to take away that we're just like you guys. We go through our struggles, our obstacles, our journeys. We just happen to be deaf.
What the Deaf isn't just for those who are hard of hearing. It is also a space for those of able hearing to ask questions and to break down their assumptions.
Because of those assumptions or what they have, their thoughts and their ideas of what a deaf person should be, it makes them scared to ask questions, or they just proceed with that assumption without letting me explain what it's like to be deaf, because I'm the one that's deaf at the end of the day. You have no idea. So go ahead and ask instead of having that fear set in and stop you from asking people those questions. This starts the dialogue with the hearing audience about what it's like to be deaf and how there's really no right or wrong way to be deaf in this world. And what it's like to live in a world that is based on auditory skills and how we lack that and how I navigate through my life. So I think it's amazing to have that dialogue with the audience and to educate them that I'm just a human being at the end of the day.
Again, we're just two deaf women in this beautiful world that has so many wonderful deaf people. And I think we're starting to make that impact, but there's always more we can do. There's always things that we want to make a difference in the world with different platforms to make a larger impact, to fill more gaps that need to be filled. But having this open dialogue with our podcast and with our dialogue with our friends, we're starting to realize what other gaps are missing and how we are so motivated to continue that dialogue to fill in those gaps.
This topic is not difficult for them. It is what they love and what they feel inspired to do.
As a deaf person, it's a full-time job. It's a lifetime job where I'm always going to be constantly educating people, and it happens to be my passion anyways. And so I always desire for more, and there's always room for improvement. The podcast fills some gaps, but there's other gaps that I want to continue filling for the rest of my life too.
Our next guest encompasses today's topic. She facilitates difficult dialogue in extremely dangerous situations. Welcome to the show, Bianca.
Thank you for having me.
So you get into conversations with gang members in order to bring peace.
Correct.
Why do you do that?
Because I'm an anti-violence activist, but the main reason is I know that there's a better way because I used to be that person. I changed my life around, and I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. And worse, I don't want to see anyone dead or doing life in prison.
So take us back to what you have been through.
So my past life includes 36 years addicted to heroin, living on the streets. I was in a gang. I became a criminal. I ultimately spent 12 years in the state penitentiary in the state of Illinois. I was a career criminal. And 11 years ago, well, actually almost, on May 10th, 2010 was the last time I got high and the last time I got arrested. And I changed my life around and have truly dedicated my life to the streets and helping at-risk youth and high-risk young adults involved in high-risk street activity.
Most people, when they change their life around, it's hard sometimes to acknowledge where you have been and then go back there to help others. What made you want to get back into exactly where you were, but on the other side?
Yeah, I feel very comfortable there, and it's what I know. I spent the majority of my adult life doing that, like kicking it on the blocks and, doing, criminal activity, what have you. But now when I go back in, I'm in a different role. And then I have street credibility and I have a reputation of like, I'm not the police, I'm not the social worker, the mother. And young guys, some of them, I know they're older family members from back in my day. So I am respected. And then just the fact that I once was involved in that life, that message is received easier.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is you're not with the police.
No.
So how do they know that? Why do they trust you?
Because they know, because street knows the street.
How close have you been to being shot?
Oh, well, in my past life, I was shot. And, but now in my new life, of the past 11 years, many times I've had to duck behind cars because I'm in dangerous communities on the streets, on the corners with guys who are involved in violence and involved in, gang activity. And, a drive-by shooting can happen at any time.
That's what I was thinking is here you are facilitating these conversations. And at any point, your life is at risk.
Yes. I've been on the scene. There was one incident in Uptown where me and another colleague stopped to get something to eat. And then I saw some of the guys hanging on the corner across the street. And I go, hey, let's just walk over there and talk to them. So we went over there to talk to them, see what's up, and also, even though you're acting like, cool and you're talking, you're feeling the pulse also. Is something, boiling or whatever. Anyway, within 3 minutes, I kid you not, all of a sudden some guys ran from like kitty corner and started shooting. And the guy literally next to me got shot. And it was quite the scene.
And what are the conversations you're having? Are you trying to get them off the streets?
First of all, you're bonding and you have the relationship with young people and they trust you. Like look, I don't want to know anything. Don't tell me anything you did. I'm just trying to help you. What do you need? What could I help you with, right? And maybe sometimes there's some guys that are really out there that they're not trying to hear that. So you kind of have to undercover trick them in a way, kind of like. So I am often known to, over the years, say, hey, I'm going to come pick you up. And then I'm like, we're going to go downtown and I'm going to take you guys to lunch. And I kid you not, a lot of these guys live within that block that they're from. And, and so like with violence, there's so many layers, like they're just kind of stuck, and maybe if you can broaden and open that up of another world, there's a whole world out there. It's possible that you can get people to think in a different way, more open. But I'm not going to lie, this is not for the faint of heart because it's a lot of heartache. And over the years, I had to learn because you lose guys, and they get killed. And it really hurts because I am so close with them. And then I get that call, that dreaded call. So-and-so just got killed. I get calls in the middle of the night, like as if I'm the mother.
And on the opposite side of that, the difficult dialogue that you are doing, is it worth it?
I think it is because if it's worth saving one life, I sleep good at night. And regardless, when I go to sleep at night, I know in my heart that I did everything I could that day to make a difference in somebody's life, even if it's just as much as smile at a stranger.
What's interesting is you are really putting yourself out there in ways that a lot of us don't quite understand. So to all of our viewers that are watching right now, I have to say you're enlightening us in a different world we didn't even know and facilitating conversations that we might not even be able to have.
Right. That you don't even know that are even happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Whitney. I'm totally honored. Thank you so much.
Leaving on a high note with a musician whose difficult dialogue is changing the world.
My name is Gaelynn Lea, and I'm a musician and a public speaker and a disability rights advocate from Duluth, Minnesota. I do a lot of speaking about disability awareness and just some of the barriers that people with disabilities still face in our society. But I always end that talk with like reframing disability to be a form of diversity, because I think there's a lot of negative stigma or stereotypes or just negative energy around the concept of disability, when in fact it's a very natural part of the human experience and it affects 1 in 4 Americans, and it's not something that we need to pity, but we have to support it, make sure people have the resources they need, and then we can celebrate it as a form of diversity.
Gaelynn's voice is becoming known for advocacy, yet she's also using it to perform and speak around the world.
Don't tell me we've got time. In 2016, I won NPR Music's Tiny Desk contest, and that kind of launched the opportunity to tour nationally and internationally. The NPR Music Tiny Desk Contest is an annual contest where people who are not signed to a label can submit an original song that they wrote in the form of a YouTube video, and it has to be recorded in front of a desk so that they know that you make it for that contest. I submitted my song Someday Will Linger in the Sun. And I love you. As a touring artist, I didn't realize, I always thought it was like my hometown isn't the most accessible when it comes to venues. And then I started finding the same issues all over the country and in fact in other countries too. And so we're not going to see as many disabled artists if there are so many barriers to entry. Most venues don't have ramps to the stage. A lot of places don't have accessible bathrooms, or they're just not actively looking to include disabled people, even on that level. And so making the arts more welcoming and in fact inclusive of disability, I think would change culture ultimately. We understand what we're able to see and learn about, and if you don't have disabled people represented in the arts, it's harder to move that discussion forward because it feels like it's not really a part of our society, and it is.
Gaelynn stresses the importance of changing the way we discuss disability.
Talking about disability in the media is a really important piece of the discussion because there's a few really negative, I think, things that come out of representing disability without really being authentic about it. The first is the idea of her life is really difficult and somehow she still managed to make this art. So there was one newspaper article that I did an interview for. It went great, I thought. And when the article came out, the first line was, "It didn't look like she'd be able to do much with her life until she found music." That just doesn't represent anything that I said during the entire interviews. But I think there's another narrative that I want to change, which is the inspiration, if they can do it, I can do it kind of thing. Because even that idea that seems like it's in a more positive light, stories that are designed only to inspire non-disabled audiences are ultimately coming from this place of their disability is an obstacle. And I'm not saying that people with disabilities never feel that their disability has presented obstacles, but if we only talk about disability as an obstacle rather than just a way of existing in the world, we're never going to move to a place of actual equality. And so even subtle things, I've turned down a lot of pieces because the sole angle is, how did you overcome your disability to learn how to play? And it's well, I don't see it that way. And so we're just not on the same page. And I'm hoping that changes the more, I'm not the only one saying this kind of thing. So I want to see that change, because if people realize that we don't talk about other forms of diversity as overcoming, you don't overcome your race, you don't overcome your gender. I see disability as another extension of diversity in that way.
Today, we met so many people who are using their voices to create change. We all have a story, and today's guests are amazing examples of using that to better the world. Remember, your story matters.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by O'Connor Law Firm. When it comes to your injuries, we take it personally. Sciton, because results matter. TheraDerm Clinical Skincare, committed to developing skincare products designed to restore skin health and promote natural beauty. Happy to meet you. Prime, fresh, fast. Lee Marcus, stop looking, start finding. Children's Learning Place, ballroom baths and home design. Pedalheads, UFC Gym Wrigleyville, My Buddies Chicago, Brendan Studzinski with State Farm, Goldfish Swim School, Ella's Bubbles, The Kids Table, High Five Sports Chicago, The Metropolitan Chicago, Fresh Dental, Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, Mitchell Black, Jewelry and Coin Mart of Schaumburg, CI Med Spa, Love Your Melon, Deluxe Cleaning Services, STI Moving and Storage, Tutu School Chicago, and by other sponsors. Go beyond the interview with Whitney Reynolds and her 52-week guide of inspiration. The book goes deeper into the topics you see on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To get your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to whitneyreynolds.com/store and use code PBS. For more information on today's program, visit whitneyreynolds.com or follow us on social media. On Twitter @WhitneyReynolds and on Instagram @Whitney_Reynolds.
Our mommy.